This video's a demonstration of how to solve a percent problem when you have two populations in one problem. So when I look at this problem and read it, at the last cross-country meet between Monarch and Centaurus, the ratio of Monarch runners to Centaurus runners was 3-to-1. The question I'm trying to answer, what percentage of the runners were from Monarch? And also, what percentage of the runners were from Centaurus? Right away when I read that, I start to see that there's two populations. So I'm going to reread. At the last cross-country meet between Monarch and Centaurus, the ratio of Monarch runners to Centaurus runners was 3-to-1. So there's two populations here that are competing, and the kids at Monarch are one group and the kids at Centaurus are another group, but all together they make up all the runners. So in this problem, when we talk about a part to whole comparison, we have two parts. We have part one, which would be the Monarch runners, and then we have part two, which is the Centaurus runners. And together, they make the whole. So this part to whole comparison is a little bit more advanced, and that would be all runners. So when I make my ratio table, I'm going to have an extra row. So I know the Monarch runners to the Centaurus runners was 3-to-1. So altogether, 3 and 1 add up to 4 parts. Or there's the whole group would add up to 4. And since the question's asking me about percentage, I want the total, this group of all runners, for percentage to be 100, so I'm going to multiply by 25. That gives me 100, so I have to multiply all of these by 25. And 3 times 25 is 75. So to answer the question, 75% were Monarch runners. And 25% were Centaurus runners. We're going to practice this on these homework problems whenever we have two populations. So here on this review worksheet, we're going to look at problems 8, 9, 10, and 11. And every time we read the problem, we're going to decide if there's more than one population or just one population. So 3 out of 4 6th graders, that's my first population, have read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Find the percent of 6th graders, it's still the same population, that have read Percy Jackson. So there's only one part here in this part-to-whole comparison. And the part is sixth graders that have read Percy Jackson to all the sixth graders. So for example, the ratio 3 is, that's the group that have read sixth graders, or read Percy Jackson, and that's compared to 4, which would be the part that represents all the sixth graders. So 3 out of the 4 sixth graders have read Percy Jackson. So this only has one population. We want to get to 100 because we're trying to find percent. So I have to multiply by 25. So 75% of the sixth graders have read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Looking at the next problem, 3 out of 8 students have read Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. Find the percent of students that have read Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. This is still just one population. Now we're just talking about students. So the part that have read Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters is 3 out of all of the students that the problem is talking about would be 8. So we're going to go back to the technique of, since 8 doesn't go into 100 evenly, just multiplying by 100. And then dividing by 8, which is probably the quickest way to get to 100. So we're going to divide this by 8. 8 times 3 is 24. When I subtract, I get 60. So 8 times 7 is 56. And when I subtract, I get 4. So this is 37 and 4/8. 4/8 is a half. So 37.5%. Now when we look at number 10, at LMS, the ratio of sixth graders, that's one population, to eighth graders, that's a second population. Now we have 2 populations. At LMS, the ratio of sixth graders to eighth graders that have read the entire Percy Jackson series of books is 9, representing the sixth graders, to 11, representing the eighth graders. Of the students that have read the entire students, so the students is all, the whole. Of the students that have read the entire series, what percent is sixth graders and what percent is eighth graders? And the hint is find the ratio of sixth graders to the ratio of the, I should say, eighth graders. And the ratio of eighth graders to all students. In other words, there is more than one population here. Part 1 would be the sixth graders. Part 2 would be the eighth graders. Those 2 parts make the whole. The whole is all students. So the ratio is sixth graders 9 to eighth graders 11. So the whole would be 9 plus 11 or 20. Since we're trying to find percent, we now have to get the 20 to 100. So we can multiply by 5. So that would be 55, and 9 times 5 would be 45. So 45% are sixth graders, and 55% are eighth graders. Whoops, 55%. This last problem, the ratio of boys to girls in a class is 12 to 18. So again, there's two populations. What percent of the class is boys? What percent of the class is girls? So the hint is find the ratio of boys and the ratio of girls to all students. There's two populations. Part 1 could be boys. Part 2 could be girls. And then the whole would be all students. So the ratio of boys to girls is 12 to 18. When you add 12 and 18, you get 30. We want to get percent. So what we can do here is divide out the common factor. Divide by 6, and that would give us 5. Divide 18 by 6, and you get 3. And divide 12 by 6, and you get 2. So we're dividing by 6 here. And then it's easier to get to 100. So now I can times by 20. So I would have 100, 60, and 40. So 40% and 60%. 40% are boys, 60% are girls.